training bus?
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
You don't know all the answers to the questions about reality. You cannot claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I see that which has been made hidden as a part of a family and explores the consciousness. I'm the void
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting live from Daytona Beach, Florida. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Rupe, and we are live on Fringe.fm, KTLK Digital Broadcasting. The call-in number for tonight's 1-800-588-0335. And Jeff Harman's back here with us tonight as we're going to talk about what's coming up for the summertime. So this is always a good broadcast. It's always pretty informative show, so you might want to sit back and enjoy yourself, because we're going to be talking about some deep info tonight. My website is lightingthevoid.com. You can sign up to become a member there. I know we got some new members already, so thank you guys for signing up. And make sure you download the Fringe FM app so you can listen to everywhere. So we've had, quite a few people download the new app this week, and I'm really impressed with it, even though we're still tweaking it. So what I want to do is, now that we got Jeff with us, I want to jump right into this. And if you've never heard Jeff Harman before, which I'm hoping you have, but if you haven't, Jeff Harman is a second-generation astrologer and spiritual consultant with over 40 years of experience. He's the only astrologer on the planet who stores his clients' records in filing cabinets given to him by the one and only George Carlin, and he's got mine in there too. And Harman offers detailed personal and business readings using Vedic, Nadi, classical, and astrolocation astrology. He also offers corrective measures, and he works with clients to design custom talismans made with natural, untreated gems. He also solved many paranormal cases involving haunted dwellings, UFO-related events, and possession. He has cleared people, homes, and commercial spaces experiencing negative spiritual attachments, and has assisted treasure hunters in deciding if and when and where to dig. He's also been contracted for special research projects. Now, right now, Jeff has also worked in many areas of the entertainment industry. He has patented technologies, and he has performed forensic work as a sound expert in association with many federal, state, and local government agencies. And is one of my favorite people, if not one of my favorite astrologers on the planet, and has been coming on the show for a long time now. And thanks for coming back, Jeff, and joining us. It's always good to have you here.
Hey, Joe. Well, that was a great introduction. Thanks. Now I got to live up to all that. So that's great.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, I love to come back. It's always good to be on your show, Joe.
Yeah, I like talking to you about this stuff. Usually we get into some really deep esoteric stuff here too, but this whole thing that we've been through, I got to tell you, I don't know if it's over. People are asking, well, is it over? Nothing's ever over, is it? As far as like, transitional states and stuff. And that last moon that we went through with Scorpio, I didn't even get to talk to you about that. And I'm talking specifically Western astrology was a doozy for a lot of us. So are things even remotely close to looking up?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great, thing to bring up, Joe, because it's interesting because I've been on a few shows lately talking about the kind of crap storm that's been brewing for the United States, and it's exceedingly powerful right now coming at us. And, you talk about that last new moon. And I can tell you, we've had some eclipses here that are very powerful. Eclipses have very long-term effects. They often happen, but the effects of them linger around for up to a year and a half sometimes. And it actually takes aspects. The eclipse becomes like hot points. And, that's something I've always felt about astrology is, everyone thinks it's just this woo-woo crystal ball stuff, with planets and all this symbolism. It's really celestial mechanics. In fact, prior to the 1700s, astrology was astronomy. And what I like about Vedic astrology, Nadi astrology, and also I should say the traditional classical Egyptian and Greek types, origins of astrology is it truly is astronomy. And I believe that the planets are actually multidimensional portals that angelic forces and karmic forces work through. And I think astrology is far deeper than we're ever going to fully understand. And one of the things that I can say is the United States right now is probably in the most dire positions it's ever been in by far. And I think, did you set me up, Joe, so that I could do a screen share on this?
Yeah, we can have this. We can have this later for the people on YouTube. We did that last time for you too. So
yeah. So I'll keep it in plain English, and then so that anybody listening can also just listen. But then for those who want to go on YouTube, I'll share my screen. And it looks like you got me all set up there for screen sharing. So let me go back over here. One of the things that I have up here on the screen right now is the United States birth chart. And there's several different charts that people use because no one can fully agree when the signing of the Declaration of Independence was actually commenced.
Sure.
The one that I find is pretty good is a chart named after a man named Ebenezer Sibley. He was a Mason who was believed to have recorded the exact time that the first commencement of the Declaration was signed. And they say that was corroborated by the bells ringing in the churches in Philadelphia, or one of the churches. So, I wasn't there. That was way before my birth time. But I can tell you, it does seem to show up as a pretty good chart. But the things I'm about to talk about, I would say it doesn't matter which time you used in 1776 of July 4th, because the outer planet transits, which are very slow, particularly Pluto and Neptune and Saturn, are having some profound effects on the United States.
Right.
And I don't think we need astrology to know that. I just came in off the freeway in Los Angeles here. We actually live up in West Hills, which is quite a bit north of Los Angeles, about 30 miles north. And I was stunned. I have a gas station that I have been getting fuel at on my motorcycle. And guess what premium was when I just pulled in?
I don't know.
$6.40 a gallon.
$7. Yeah, I heard about that.
$6.40 a gallon. Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, in Beverly Hills, it's over $8. So I think it's pushing over $8 now.
That's crazy.
And it's beyond crazy. And I'm talking to clients who own trucking companies and also truckers. My brother actually owns a construction company. And, these semis, at best, they're getting 4 to 6 miles a gallon. They're pulling heavy weight. And when they pull up to the fuel pump, they're putting in somewhere between 250 and 350 gallons on some of these road machines. Now you do the math, that's $6.50 a gallon. That's some serious money. You're talking $1,800 to $2,000 plus to fill up the average semi. And what I'm hearing from these people owning these companies, not just the independent truckers, is not only can they not afford to run anymore, they can't get parts. All the parts are backed up in the supply chains. And this has an exponential effect. And they're saying, we don't know that we can stay in business. We just have to keep raising prices and prices. Well, to you and I, Joe, and everyone else listening, this is, a race to the bottom. If they don't stop this, and Biden's answer, and not to get political here, but the answer right now of the people running the District of Criminals, which is known also as Washington, D.C., is clearly, just get an electric car. Well, okay. The electric cars these days, the average ones are they start at like maybe 50,000 up, and they go way up from there, including the trucks. And, forget about the climate change stuff, just the mechanics of just junking your old car. Who's going to want to buy it? This whole transition into this new era of, again, non-petrochemical society, I think is a bit unrealistic at the very least. What are the firemen going to do? What is the military going to do? What is the police going to do? Push their cars to the scene when fuel becomes untenable? So, right. Back to astrology. What can I say about what's happening? Well, if you remember, Joe, for years, I've been on your show and everybody, Jeff, what do you think of the Mayan calendar? And I said, not a thing. I said, but I'm really concerned about 2020 forward. And of course, the big focus has been COVID, but 2020 was not just COVID. 2020 was a trigger point, just like 9/11 was a trigger point, just like 2008 and 9 were trigger points financially, as well as the Patriot Act in 2001 with 9/11. So these are far, far deeper. And I believe George Carlin might have had it right. Forget the politicians. You have owners. They own and print the money at the top of the pyramid. And again, not to get political and conspiratorial, but if you take a good, close look, there are very few conglomerates who basically run all of the banking, all of the energy, the food supplies and the food chains and everything else, like Vanguard, BlackRock, and others that many people have heard of. And of course, also we hear names bantered about like George Soros and Klaus Schwab. But I think the rabbit hole goes way deeper. I think it's the same cabal that Wilson handed the keys to the kingdom over to about 100 and something years ago. Thomas Jefferson said it best: if anyone ever gets to print our money, they will be more dangerous than any standing army. And clearly that's happened. Well, back to astrology, one of the things that I think I warned about on your show about a year ago was we just completed a Neptune square Mars and a Neptune opposition Neptune. And you might say, okay, what does that mean? Well, that happened right before the Civil War. And you can see this series actually completed right here on the screen right at the end of January, beginning of March this year. There was two aspects, and they happened 3 times. The first one was exactly when the borders were opened by the Biden administration. The second one is precisely when the Afghanistan debacle happened. And the final one is been all this debacle with, fuel and inflation and et cetera. Except, now this actually happened before 180 years ago, right when the Civil War commenced in 1861. But unlike then, we have a Pluto return. And the United States has never, ever experienced this before. Pluto has about a 245 to 250 year synodic cycle. It's not exact, but it's average. And the United States experienced its first Pluto return right in February this year. In fact, I've actually got on the screen for someone who wants to watch the YouTube version. Right around February 18th or 19th, it was exact. That's almost precisely when Putin was going over to blow up the labs. I'm sorry, attacked Ukraine. And then the second, I do that at times. You got to watch.
That's okay. I get it.
But yeah, that truth just sneaks out, but I can't help it. Anyways, the other thing is this July, you can actually see if anybody watches the YouTube, July about 11th this year, Pluto returns the second aspect to the United States. Well, things often, they say, come in threes. The first one is the initiation. The second one is the transformation or action. And the third one is the integration and result, which happens to the United States in December 26th, the day after Christmas, actually 27th. So we have three aspects of the Pluto return on the United States birth chart this year. What does this mean in plain English? Well, first off, Pluto, they can demean it all they want from being a planet, but it is, I call it brutal Pluto. It may be little, but dynamite and C4 comes in small packages too. And I'm telling you, in my experience on people's birth charts, as well as on entities, it is extremely transformative and can sometimes be very destructive. And I don't think you need astrology, a crystal ball, or anything else to tell you if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, the cities will burn. And I think this July, after the 4th of July, we are likely to see some really serious events going on between July all the way into the end of the year that might be unprecedented.
All the way through New Year's, really.
Yeah, all the way through New Year's. That's exactly right. And and now the other element, and one of my favorite types of astrology is a type of astrology known as Nadi astrology. Now, a lot of people have heard of Vedic astrology. In fact, a friend of mine, he just passed away, Chakrapani, a few years ago. He was an old man from India, really nice guy. Used to go out to dinner with him. He's the guy who actually may have coined that phrase. I remember him saying, well, I knew Americans would never figure out what Jyotisha means, so I called it Vedic astrology. I thought, well, that's cool. And see, Jyotish is the real name of Vedic astrology. Jyotisha is a Sanskrit word that unpacks into the science of the light of the soul. And there's many branches. I don't think I'll ever live to fully understand, and no one ever will, the depth and divine profound depths that this stuff goes to. But most of it that people learn is Maharishi Parashara's methods and Maharishi Jaimini's, which are both very good. But the Nadi astrology may have an advantage, or it may be more ancient than the other two. It truly, truly looks at astrology in the most different way I've ever seen. Well, why I bring all that up is because I did the United States with the Sibley chart in Nadi astrology, and I'm actually putting on the screen for anybody who does go and watch the YouTube. And what you'll see here, even though I have to do it by hand.
That's really cool, though. I like that, though.
Is cool. Well, I don't have any computer programs that do the progressions properly. So what you'll see here in this band, this is the United States birth chart in the square box in the center. And in the outer band are the progressions. Well, Saturn has about a 30-year progression per sign. So if you do the math, this birthday of the United States, which is 246 years old, and is when Saturn, for the first time ever, also hits the air trine. Now, air trines are very, very profound. Why? What does it take to make fire burn? Air. You can't have fire without air, and you can't, make it burn well without it. So it tends to be very active. They call it the Dharma trine. Dharma is purpose or action, right? So notice Saturn in that progression is also going to go over the United States, Mars, which can be a lot of violence, Venus, Jupiter, and the sun, and it also changes the destiny modifier of the moon. See, if you look at the moons in an air trine, so all those planets I just mentioned, very, very powerful. plus you combine that with a Pluto return, plain English and all this, we may see stuff come unbolted this summer as this progression ensues like we've never seen before. I'm actually surprised it hasn't happened more, but I think this is really going to be the catalyst that will bring that on. The other thing is, this, you can see at 246.5, these are the Jupiter progressions. See, Saturn is karma. If you look at the meaning of Saturn, Saturn always has a profound effect. Saturn is the cross over the crescent of the moon. It's previously concretized energies or karmas that have previously set themselves in motion, and then they become manifest when Saturn is in play. Jupiter is exactly the opposite. Notice its glyph is the crescent of the moon over the cross. It's like a divine parabolical dish scooping up the divine energy and concretizing it into new reality. See, where Saturn's old, Saturn's karma, past, becoming manifest. Saturn's like a capacitor. So here's my point. We got some really interesting dynamics happening here on the United States. When we go back to that, Saturn kicks in this July. And again, I don't think we need astrology to tell us all hell's going to break loose if they don't start changing the economic direction. I mean, Biden's got the plane heading straight towards the ground, full speed ahead with the landing gear not up. And Jimmy Kimmel can't make us feel good by saying we all need to be yelled at. So I think, that was, a total political mind control job there in a lot of ways, because no matter what anyone says, everyone's feeling the insanity that's going on. There's nothing wrong with transitioning to higher tech energy. You just can't turn off the faucet and say, that's it, we're doing it right now, whether you're ready or not. Well, we're not ready.
Well, that's what they're trying to do economically. They're trying to force all this stuff on us. Well, the oil companies are getting richer. And Henry Kissinger said that too. Who, if you control the food, you control the people, but whoever controls the oil controls the nations, right?
Controls the world.
Yeah.
And it ain't Putin causing it. They can say whatever they want. I mean, there's many people in the oil industry who are saying that you can't turn off the gas leases and shut them all down. Even the refineries. There was one gentleman who runs a refinery. He's a billionaire, and he's coming out and going, this is insane. We're running over to Saudi Arabia, cutting deals in Venezuela when there's enough oil in South Dakota. I've heard from oil guys themselves who've told me this, that literally we could run this country for 100 years just in South Dakota. So I don't know, the Dakotas, I think, and let alone what we've got in many other places. I mean, the United States is energy rich. It's actually stunning how much energy we have here, and they're just choking us off. Now, why would they do that? Well, if I was a New World Order guy, which I'm certainly not, and I know they are very aware of this stuff. One of my teachers actually did astrology for some of the Rothschilds in London many years ago. He's long since gone, but he told me they use this stuff. They use electional astrology on times to commence events and agendas. And I can tell you, this whole COVID thing was the perfect timing for something like this to happen. Why? First off, we had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the sky. You could have set your watch to when COVID broke out. I mean, literally, the media went hell's fire and brimstone the second that Saturn-Pluto in January of 2020 hit. Then on the winter solstice of 2020, we had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which was a 240-year high-tech renewal. So in other words, the last time we had a great conjunction, they happen about every 240 years. It's actually called a mutation conjunction. The great conjunction was almost 1,000 years. And I talked about this on many shows, I think on your show, Joe, where the last one was the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s, the mid 1700s. Well, the next one we just had it in the winter solstice of 2020. So these guys are smart. They know the energies are there. The windows are open for this kind of stuff to happen, and they seem to be very well prepared for it when they do. Not to get into the elections and all that. They own this place, and they do. And I really think they're making a move right now. This is a war between the globalists and the nationalists, in my opinion. The globalists want what we've been hearing politicians like George Sr. Bush and others and Clinton all talk about throughout the last several decades, and that is the New World Order. There's a New World Order. This is where they're going. And the cog in the wheel that needs to be taken out in order for this to happen is the United States Constitution and the United States structure. If they can break this place and bring it to its knees and get everyone to acquiesce, we certainly will find that global domination is going to be a lot easier. The Constitution, in my opinion, is one of the greatest documents ever drafted in the history of humanity, to my knowledge. And, this is any race, any creed, any color, any person can have a shot at life and freedom here. You take that away. I mean, look what they're doing in China. They're beating people, running them out in front of cameras and making them have admissions that they won't even do. And they'll take them back in, beat them a little more and put some more makeup on them and then run them back in front of the camera.
That's so crazy.
It's horrible what they're doing. Look at some of these countries. Look at the Middle East. I mean, they'll castrate you if you do something inconsistent with the law. Burn you, dip you in oil. I mean, these are some interesting.
You also got the Great Reset going on. You got all this lockstep stuff. They want you to own nothing and like it. And then once all this stuff comes around, they're going to be telling you what to eat. Then they're going to be telling you, what you can and can't do, where you can and can't drive, shutting your cars down. You'll be under a social structure, all this stuff. It's coming too. They've already talked about it, but we're here talking to Jeff Harman, and he's letting you know that the astrology is confirming a lot of this stuff. I think we need to take a deeper look at it. We'll be right back with Jeff Harman. Stay with us. And we're talking about what's happening to America as far as all of this astrology stuff goes. I couldn't think of a better astrologer to talk to about this stuff, because we're getting into Vedic astrology, Western astrology. I mean, Jeff does it all, really. Kabbalistic astrology, Nadi astrology, which is an ancient astrology that a lot of us haven't even heard of nor practiced. And Jeff, I kind of want to look at this stuff on a spiritual level too, because earlier you were talking about how you believe that these planets are portals, so to speak, for things to happen or pass through. And it's hard to make a case for that sometimes, especially when you're talking on an esoteric level, because there's a lot of space and scientific stuff and things that go on like that. But when you look into it, they're not just floating out there for no reason. And since the ancient times, especially the 7 traditional planets, things have happened when they're during certain alignments. And I just kind of want you to talk about that, because I think astrology is easier to understand how true and accurate it is when we don't look at it from a point of view like, well, we need to prove that it's actually affecting us. Well, what if we just look at the records? I mean, isn't that what astrology is a record of things that happen when alignments happen,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, there was some great research done to that. And it's a traditional astrology that some of the old rabbis had all the way back into Egypt. In fact, there was a synagogue discovered in Egypt, and it was pretty amazing. It appears to be somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 years old, and they haven't quite figured that all out yet. But when they got into it, they literally were blowing the dust off of documents that were just pristine. And clearly, there's evidence, many people have heard of Ptolemy, and then, of course, Dorotheus, who was also an Egyptian king believed to have penned many things. And they found, and I have found in the research, that they were exceedingly aware. See, most people didn't have their birth time back at these times. Mom was lucky to live if you had a child.
Yeah.
And when they did, it was, all about saving the child and the mother. And, timepieces weren't around. I mean, in our modern world, we have just the luxury of so much mechanized timepieces that are right on, especially with satellites and cell phones and all that. Well, back in the day, few knew their exact time of birth. And So one of the premier tools that was used was interrogation or horary or prashna astrology. In fact, if anybody goes on the internet, you'll see I've got on the screen here or on the YouTube. Interrogation was the term that I liked the most. It was actually coined probably by Rabbi Ibn Ezra somewhere in the 11th century, but that may have been a carryover too. No one knows. Modern astrologers call it horary. I hate that word. It's like it's got hair on it, but it's synonymous. Prashna too, if you go to India, or some of the Vedic astrologers will call divinational astrology prashna. Well, here's what's interesting about this, because you're talking about the portals and what is astrology and all that. Interrogation astrology is really consciousness interacting with the heavens, and the skeptics go, well, how can that be, right? And believe me, I was a skeptic too, and I started this stuff right around 75. My mother was nailing my girlfriends to the T's, and I had the car then and the keys, and I was going out with girls, and she would just be spot on. And she played around with what she called horary at the time, which later we converted it to interrogation because I like that word better. But the bottom line is, I said, how the heck do you know all this stuff? She goes, well, I got their chart and I looked at, some questions. And I said, come on. I said, this stuff doesn't work. She just laughed and said, give it a try before you knock it. In fact, her birthday was yesterday, and she died in 1988. So I always think about her on her birthday. And the bottom line is, I started to check it out, and I said, wow, this is just not chance, is it? I said, this is far, far more accurate than any lucky chance. And since then, that was 47 years ago now. Since then, I have to say, again, I don't believe anything, Joe. When I talk about that, belief is a dangerous thing. And I think I like science because science questions, and science wants to repeat things, and science wants to see validation. That's why, electronics, I love electronics because, you absolutely can measure things pristinely. Well, once you get past the skepticism of astrology, it's quite profound how accurate interrogation astrology is. I have a business partner who had lost some gemstones. And I've had so many clients over the years who lost objects, and they'd say, well, am I going to find it? And if the chart says no, you won't find it. If it says yes, you will. Or it comes back to you. I can tell you 100 stories about missing money, missing keys. Like I lost a set of keys one night, bringing my son's motorcycle over to a friend. And after 2 hours of looking, I just gave up because I figured they're somewhere over the 5-mile stretch to the kid's house. And finally, I cast a chart, and the chart says, nope, you're going to find them. Well, that renewed my interest. So this time I got on a motorcycle and I drove really slow through the whole path, and boom, there they were right in the middle of the road, like the chart said. I just lost another set of keys here just a few years later, and I cast a chart, and somebody picked them up, and that's exactly what happened. And I'll never see them. So it's amazing. You can ask about anything. You can ask about lost pets, about issues with health. Like my wife just asked me a while back, geez, you think I'm gonna be okay? I said, well, go to the doctor. I always appreciate allopathic medicine, but I said, I'll bet they're going to find this. Well, that's exactly what they found, what the chart said. So how can astrology do this? And, even to the flat earthers, I say it's an interactive celestial consciousness that's going on. There's something a lot deeper here than just astrology. And, I always love to show this diagram where, God's above all creation. And to the atheists, I say, well, then I guess you don't want to listen to this conversation. But God's above all creation, and our souls are created hundreds of dimensions above the celestial universes. And in fact, if anybody goes on YouTube, I'm pointing to a word called absolute. This means where the divine emanation of souls are. And you have the seraphims and the cherubims and the thrones. They claim there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions up here. This is vast, vast upper divinity of heavens. The next world's down, Braya, is a Hebrew Aramaic word that refers to where the waters of creation get more dense. And now we have the dominance, virtues, and powers. Again, 49 dimensions, 49 subdimensions. It's almost a couple of hundred dimensions down where the quote unquote universe is, except they claim in the Sefer Yetzirah there may be 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions in each one. And now you start seeing the archangels, the angels, the intelligences, and the spirits. And boy, there sure seems to be a lot of them. And they're encoded in the ancient scriptures of Sanskrit, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Coptic. And they're clearly there. They're in ciphers. They're secretly there. And the Psalms are all over the place. Our little Milky Way is sitting way at the bottom of this. And no scientist can ever tell us how vast the universe is. I certainly don't know. And we're discovering things in science continuously that they are saying we didn't know. Well, if there's 49 parallel universes, let alone the one we can't even fathom, that's beyond my comprehension. I don't know about you. But and then the last world's Asaya is the astral planes, and they call that the pouch of the slingshot in some texts. And that's referred to because when we exit these meat suits known as bodies, or what we would call death, we matriculate to some dimension in these astral planes. And usually, we get a guy with a suit tie and a microphone telling us about the devil, but it's just a little bit deeper than that. You have the four fallen angelic, Lucifer, Satan, Belial, and Leviathan. And it's really fascinating is if you get into quantum physics and also general physics, everything in this particular dimension has day and night, positive and negative,
right?
Proton, electron.
I was just talking about that last night, actually, man.
All these balancing forces. That's right. And they claim, and I believe that they're right, in some of these ancient texts, that the reality, the fabric of this particular reality requires these fallen angels to interact. In fact, that's maybe why they're so evil and they hate us so much, is because they actually were punished to be a part of the fabric of reality. And they'll do anything to destroy the human race. They'll do anything to cause chaos because they are literally incarcerated in these lower dimensions, holding, there's ancient magic texts that say, like we hear the stories about Lazarus and raising people from the dead. I think it may be true in that these guys are required to participate in that. In fact, that's why I love Nadi astrology. In Nadi astrology, they actually claim that the ecliptical angles of the sun and the moon and the earth, where eclipses happen, are directly related to the demonic forces that kill us. In other words, we come here for everybody, starts out as an embryo, we grow, we mature, we atrophy, and we die. You can't escape that. I don't care if you're a tree, a person, a plant, an animal, whatever. You're going to go through that cyclic cycle. And the nodes where eclipse points happen, when the sun and the moon and the earth align, in Vedic astrology, Rahu is known as the north node and Ketu is the south node. And Ketu means liberation of karma. So when Ketu meets Saturn by progression and transit and very specific combinations, you and I will exit the body known as death. And Rahu rules the movie we're all living. And I really find that that's accurate. Rahu, if you talk to the yogis, they'll all tell you, oh, the whole physical world's an illusion, right? And I always laugh and say, yeah, hit your hand with a hammer, pal, and call me at the first of the month. It ain't an illusion. It's very real. But on the other hand, They're absolutely right, because we see our loved ones, our pets, pass on. And the only thing left here is the attorneys and the estates fighting over who gets what. Nobody takes nothing with them on the physical plane other than the localized spirit, psyche, consciousness tied to the soul. And that's what's fascinating, because there's something going on here. I always say, forget Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus. This is truly the soul matrix, or one of them. I think there's many, many of them. But, I always love, if anybody goes on the YouTube, I don't know if you can see this, Joe. This is one of my favorite cartoons. It's a little spaceship going by Earth, and the little kid in the back says, "Mom, can I stop? We got to go pee." And then
the reviews are horrible.
And the reviews are horrible. Let's skip this place. So,
but have you ever listened to Robert Monroe's books, Journeys Out of the Body, where he does? Yeah. He actually remembers, like in a second or third book, or him and his other buddy they're wanting to stop and have the Earth experience, and everybody's kind of warning them about it. They're like, "That's pretty noisy down there, and it's hard to get out of," So that's it.
And this could be, according to certain texts, like in the Rig Vedas and Arthas and other obscure texts, they're not definitive. And even in the Upanishads, this may be one of just infinite numbers of experiences. In fact, even in the ancient Hebrew texts, that we are in these meat suits called bodies in this genetic world here, but there is overwhelming documentation, in my opinion, to souls matriculating to other places on the Sephirotic tree of life, which happens to be these planets, and not only in this solar system, but many others. So reality, in psychology, they like to refer to, we've got this conscious mind, right? And then we've got a subconscious mind, even though that's a bit of an older model. The Hebrew texts, like the Sharia Gilgam, actually talk about the lower conscious mind being something strange called the nefesh. The nefesh, they say, is what psychology refers to as, it's kind of like, I kind of refer to it as the keyboard, mouse and screen that we use in our consciousness that comports into the body. In other words, it's the interface of reality that we all have during these lives. And when you stop and think about how miraculous the control of your hands and feet, your eyes, your ears. I used to teach a physics class, and I would demonstrate that the ear is so accurate. It can actually hear the kerbumping of air molecules in an anechoic chamber after about 24 hours. Your eye is so accurate. It can actually see in complete pitch darkness because there's a chemical that's destroyed by light all the time. So when you look at the genetics and the miraculous things of this body, it's stunning. Just you go find me a robot that can pick up a cup of coffee with the dexterity you can. Good luck. They're probably going to have it pretty close soon, but I think the Creator did some pretty good work here on all these physical bodies. Just look at a bird land on a branch sometime. Go get an F-16 to do that. Just because they can land on the deck now doesn't give them that kind of dexterity. But the point is that something very, very divine and magical in a divine sense is going on this planet. And what the heck is astrology? It certainly seems to be the celestial influences on the soul that the angels picked when the soul was tied into the body permanently at first breath. They actually say the conception is where the spirit, psyche, and soul are attached by silver cord. But then when we exit the womb, the celestial influences are actually picked by the angel at the place you're born and the mother you're born to at that moment in time. So it's really fascinating stuff.
I've talked to you. I've talked to you about this several times, right? And so last night I've been going through the paths on the tree of life, and you talk about those balancing forces. Well, last night I was specifically discussing the path of Lamed, right, which is the path between Tifereth and Geburah, which is, the balancing force of justice. It has the Libra and that card on there and everything. And Robert Wayne goes into that, and he talks a lot about the balancing forces of everything that keep things together on a bigger level. So like what you're talking about, how consciousness works through our bodies and works through everything, and how truly amazing it is when science just looks at it as electrical impulses. Well, if that be the case, we'd just be walking around, flopping around all the time, right? So our consciousness controls all kinds of really cool, miraculous things to a very accurate level. And I think the planets and the stars and our whole solar system has something to do with that. I really do.
Well, you're exactly right. It's an interactive consciousness, in my opinion. Again, science will laugh at this because they're going to want to repeat it, the same exact thing 10 times. But I can tell you, I've got a lot of psychiatrists that I work with, and I really enjoy that. And some of them are in the prison systems, and they're in state and federal positions of control. And it's very interesting. And I can't mention who or where, but because they don't want anybody to know, and I wouldn't blame them. But on the QT, they really enjoy this because they're smart people. You can't become a psychiatrist very easy. I mean, you've got to be a medical doctor first, and then you get into the psychiatric stuff. Same thing with the psychologist. So these are smart people, or they wouldn't be where they are. And it's interesting because there's a lot of them that are very honest, and they want to dig into the deeper secrets. They know there's more going on here. And I always love to refer to Dr. Carl Wickland. He's kind of the grandfather of the spiritual esoteric, you could say, proof, in my opinion. If anybody ever wants to read a book called 30 Years Among the Dead, one of my most favorite, he graduated from the Chicago School of Medicine in, I think, 1916 or 1918. So last century. And he was actually the guy who popularized shock therapy treatment. I mean, this is a hardcore, science guy. He did not believe in anything spiritual. He actually moved to Los Angeles at the birth of Hollywood right around 1920-ish. It's all in the book. And he ran the Los Angeles County Mental Institution, doing a series of, I think they were even into lobotomies back then. It was some really creepy stuff, and shock therapy treatment, because people would get, in fact, they still use it to this day, and they get a result because it actually dislodges the disincarnate soul, and the schizophrenia goes away. He actually proved that. And what's interesting about this book, if anybody wants to read it, is he went to a party. It's an interesting story. I'll be brief. But he went to a party and met this beautiful woman and became smitten with her and wanted to marry her. And to his amazement, after they had courted for a while and decided to get married, she broke it to him. She goes, I hate to tell you this. She goes, I know you're a psychiatrist, but I'm a spiritual psychic channel. And, he was really, taken aback. And so, he's smitten with her. He married her. He decided to pursue a very scientific analysis as to whether she was delusional or not. So the it's all in the book. But here's how the book gets its title, 30 Years Among the Dead. He put her in a channeling session, and I think he had a stenographer. Of course, this is, the early 20s. This is back when dictaphones were there. You didn't have an iPhone. So she took on a disincarnate soul, and that person looked at Dr. Wickland and said, "You're the one who is shocking me with this lightning." And he says, "Well, what do you mean?" And he says, "Well, don't you remember you did this and this and this?" And he goes, "Oh my God, you couldn't have known that unless you were there." And he goes, "Well, of course I was there." And he said, "Well, do you wear a wedding ring?" And the person looked down at Wickland's wife and hands and her, and the dress. And he goes, "Oh my God, I'm in someone else's body." And, being a scientist, he said, "Well, you must be dead or disincarnate as we know it." And here's the interesting thing. He got him to realize his condition again through consciousness. And he saw his mother, who had been passed away for many decades, I believe. And he said, "This makes sense because no one understands me. No one listens to me anymore." I think he was a druggist. He ran a drugstore. Long story short, he gets the guy to leave and go into the light. And then, of course, his wife comes back in her body. Well, he goes to the mental institution, and the lady who had schizophrenia cleared up. And within a very short amount of time, she was discharged. Well, that was the beginning. He was a scientist. And see, they're not teaching this stuff in a lot of schools, though some colleges are, like the Monroe Institute, many, many others,
Right.
To their credit. But he ended up documenting in this book, and very well, I might add, 30 years of channeling and helping people on the other side to realize that they were dead and moved on. He became, he crossed over from being probably one of the most skeptical scientific people to one of the most torch-bearing, spiritual people at the end of his life that you could ever run into. A fascinating book. I tell anybody, if you want to read 30 Years Among the Dead, go buy it. It's an amazing book. And it's just one of many, many books. But back to the whole subject here tonight, when we look at the United States and we say, well, what's going on here? We're being gaslighted. We truly are.
No doubt about it.
We're being told, there's no doubt. Yeah. I mean, it's like, again, Kimmel sitting there making light of it and actually humoring us when people are really, really having a hard time. Bankruptcy attorneys, I talk to them, they're so busy right now, it's not even funny. And, so many people were trying to get SBA loans, and then they just handed $43 billion off to Ukraine.
Yeah, isn't it amazing too? And I know we got to take a break here too, Jeff, but isn't it amazing too how soft and how fast the market can reverse and prices can go up all on a little scare? If you guys don't know what Jeff is talking about gaslighting, if you've ever been personally gaslit before, it happens on a big level too. All right, so we'll be right now with Jeff Harman. Go to his website, jeffharman.com, and check out all the services there. And we're live, heading deep into the Fringe late night. Stay on the Fringe FM. Keep downloading the app. Keep participating. Tonight, Jeff Harman's here with us, and you can go to his website at jeffharman.com, and he's talking to us about what's coming in the United States as far as astrologically and what we need to look out for. And apparently, I want to recap this again, Jeff, at the top of the hour here. We have some alignments and aspects that are, how long did you say, or we've never experienced the stuff that we're about to experience astrologically. I believe that's what you said, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, we have never, we experienced similar aspects back in 1860. The United States had a Neptune square Mars series. There's 3 of them, and a Neptune opposition series. That just completed right at the beginning of this year, right when all the crazy stuff was really amping up, in this whole situation with Putin and Ukraine and all the mysterious stuff going on over there, which a lot of people know is a little more than that one that meets the eye. And secondly, there was a Pluto return. The first Pluto return in the United States happened right there. So the second one is coming up this July. And that is where the action happens. And I think it's pretty obvious that they're doing damage control right now to keep control of the Senate, House, and they've got the White House. And what's interesting is, this isn't about Democrats and Republicans and all that stuff. This is truly, I think, in my opinion, the owners at the top of the pyramid. They can talk about swamps and deep states and, industrial military complexes all they want. The bottom line is the faucet is controlled, or the flow of money in the whole Western world, so not only the United States, through these bankers at the top of the pyramid. And if there was ever a time, that they were going to make a move, I would definitely say it'd be now. And they have. And I think COVID, no matter what its origins, was certainly a window that they knew about to take advantage of. And we have seen that happen in a multiplicity types of ways. And I can tell you this summer, it really, I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong about this, but I think we're going to see some serious stuff happen here. Their weapon of choice certainly seems to be pandemics, because you don't fire a shot. In fact, the only shots that get taken are in the arm. And the interesting thing is that one really allows for societies to be shut down globally. And boy, that Saturn Pluto conjunction that happened in January of 2020, again, it was so accurate, it was creepy. And I remember saying it. I said, this is going to happen right here in the beginning of January through the latter part of it. And it's exactly what happened. The whole globe got shut down. The entire world felt that. What I'm talking about here tonight now is the Pluto conjunction, or the Pluto return to the United States Pluto. This is directly a literal transformation of America. And Pluto, often its symbolism is either complete, utter destruction, or it's the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And the question's going to be, which way does it look like it's going? Well, I can tell you the only way the phoenix comes up is if the ashes happen first. So we're certainly looking at some major changes here this July forward. And that was that naughty progression that I had referred to earlier. The question is, does it look like anything shows up to put out the fire here? Well, the answer was Jupiter. And I started to go into that earlier. Jupiter is the crescent of the moon over the cross. It's always a benefic, clearly. Well, right at about 246.5 years of the age of the United States, which is going to put us approximately 6 months past July, we have Jupiter for the first time going over for the next 12 years over the water trine of the Earth in Nadi astrology. Now, people may say, okay, great. What does that mean? Well, water trines are always deep and powerful currents that manifest spiritual stuff. Moreover, the United States Mercury is involved. So is Rahu. So what does this mean in plain English? It might mean that we see some serious disruptions happening, and they already have, much more so than I think we realize. The only one handing out executive orders like Halloween candy right now, it might be more like Biden. And the interesting thing is Jupiter going on the United States water trine, also aspecting the ascendant of the United States, might mean that we actually see some real change in a positive direction, particularly in law and in justice.
Okay.
And that's like the fire truck finally gets to the fire, and they turn the hose on, and we actually get a little change and relief starting to come our way. So this is very good news. If I'm interpreting this right, we may see at the 11th hour and 59th minute here at the end of this year, beginning of 2023, where the United States might actually, be saved before the last thread releases and we fall off the cliff forever, because you're dealing with some people here who absolutely want this country out of the way. They want stars and stripes with communism on it. And, it's really kind of creepy what's happening. And I've heard that we hear about our armed forces and all that, but I hear that there's some really powerful people in the paramilitary and the secret military. I'm talking the stuff we never get to hear about under the ground and above us. That is some pretty deep stuff. And this is where the war is going on. I think if we see anything happen, in the District of Criminals, also known as Washington, D.C., it's probably always going to already have happened at the top of the pyramid. There's a lot going on here, and I'm not so sure it isn't a mixture of angelic, demonic, and extraterrestrial that is far beyond what we know is going on. And that little war might be what the astrology is showing us, shows the outcome may lean towards.
What about any astrological signs of justice for the people that have been keeping
I just said it.
Yeah,
Jupiter.
so that's it, right? The people that have been keeping their secrets and hiding and all this other stuff, like, they should be locked up for what they did. I don't want us to forget about that kind of stuff, and I hope that they don't get away with it. That's my thing,
I think the French had the right idea, get the guillotine. But it's treasonous what has been done to this country and what is being done to this country. It truly is. And, Carlin was right. He really was. If you listen to his skit, The American Dream, you're dealing with people that do not care about us at all, all. It is all about power and control. And when you really look into some of the extremely hideous things that we hear about in the multi-tiered justice systems, you really have to conclude there's clearly demonic forces at work here. It's been leaked out in the past that if anyone tries to disrupt that cabal, they will create world war. If anybody's ever heard of the Iron Mountain Report and et cetera, there is now the power in secret weaponry, directed energy weapons, particle beams, et cetera, to just take and destroy all life on Earth, let alone the biological stuff that they got. And it's really kind of eerie where everything's at. And yet there is a divine force that keeps it all from happening. And the astrology just seems to be the energy points where the things happen, where the currents that are far deeper than the mundane world are really working. And I would tend to say, rough time right now. We may see again the fire truck show up to the fire sometime right at the end of this year. It could actually have a lot to do with the midterm elections. Again, they'll claim it was the most honest and fair election in the world. And this isn't about Biden or Trump or Harris or anyone else. This is about the system we have. They own this place. They know who's going to win before it ever happens. And we actually might see a blessing come upon this country right at the end of this year, beginning of next, that is really good. And I hope that is correct, because I can tell you this summer looks a little bit rough. There's some things coming in here. We got a Mars Saturn aspect here coming in August. We've got another one. We've got the node conjuncting Uranus right at the end of August. And then we've got a Mars Neptune. These are all triggers. Mars is always the planet that triggers violence and trouble.
Right.
And Pluto is always, I don't care what they say about it, Pluto will always bring some really brutal stuff. It just does. But through that, its purgements often give rebirth to things. And I can tell you the other thing the United States has going on in traditional Vedic astrology is something called Sadhisate. And people say, well, what the heck's that? Sadhisate is a strange word for the 7.5-year transit of Saturn over the moon. Well, what's fascinating about this, and depending on which chart, that's why I think the Sibley chart may have more accuracy, because in the Sibley chart, Saturn is clearly going over the moon. And what that means in plain English is that whenever Saturn transits the moon, see, the moon in Nadi astrology is known to be where spirit manifests on the physical plane. Mm. And, we don't need to study the moon too long to know that it's a very mysterious little satellite, right. Both from a scientific standpoint and any other. They're bouncing rocket fuselages off it. It vibrates. It's clearly something that seems to be throughout all time has been referenced to a modulator of spiritual energy, especially in Nadi and Egyptian astrology. And, we see it affect the tides, we see it affect emotions, et cetera, but it also, and plant life and any scientist who examines the flow of fluids during full and new moons.
28-day cycles of, just
huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge, yeah. And the Vedic astrology has probably one of the most profound aspects, talking about the 27 lunar mansions. Now, the Egyptians and the Arabics said there was 28. And again, I think both are accurate if you use the applicable systems. But the sidereal is the 27. And I can tell you, no astronomer, I don't care how much they polish the lenses on their telescopes, they're going to find that zodiac either, because it is a spiritual angelic construct that's interacting between the earth and the world. And I believe it is a spiritual mechanism, again, modulating spirit manifesting on this planet. And what's interesting is the United States has Saturn transiting its moon. And somebody might say, well, okay, great. What the heck does that mean in plain English, right? Well, that is very, very fascinating, because Saturn over the moon means it's Saturn's like a capacitor, and it always tends to release energies as it transits the moon. in any individual. I mean, even the skeptics that I do readings for, they'll go, wow, you're right. That's right when I had this time. That's right when I had that time. And it doesn't have to be bad, because whenever we hear the word karma, we always kind of cringe in the West here, but karma can be good. A better word might be, this is when elementals that are in your spirit, psyche, and soul become manifest in the physical plane. Now, that can be a number of ways. That can be through, people, situations, anything from, very good things happening to very challenging, people pass away, but action happens. This is when the rubber hits the road, when this stuff happens. And it's kind of amazing how accurate it is. And the United States has that all going on right now. And, you might say, well, what does it mean in plain English? Well, again, it fits with the symbolism. The good old US of A is not going to be here the way we recognize it. It's truly going to change.
So something's in a way that we don't really know what, but something's going to change.
Well, I personally think we're going to see the walls come tumbling down. By the end of the year, we actually might see some real justice come about.
Oh, that would be great.
Well, and I don't think it's going to happen, with anybody, taking up arms or anything like that. I think this is going to happen on a much higher level, in the secret, you could say, powers up above this. Eisenhower mentioned this in the late 50s, early 60s, where, he warned against this, that there are forces far above the government that are influencing things, and that this is a very dangerous place.
Well, that's something I wanted to talk to you about, because I've done some readings on the broadcast, and, Manly P. Hall discusses this stuff too in his books, What the Ancient Wisdom Expects from His Disciples. He talks specifically about these 7 mystery schools that govern the planet, that descended from the North Polar Cap, that are actually in the astral realms, not really in these buildings and stuff. And that they're, to this day, are manipulating the destinies of man, so to speak. He talks about this a lot. And other things that I've studied too, as far as like that number 7 or the 7 mysteries go, or the 7 seals of divine revelation, these kind of things that we see. I'm not saying you have the answers, but he definitely talks about 7 schools that govern the things that happen to mankind. And it is not in the buildings or in the suits. It's in the astral realm. It's in the spirit world,
Oh, yeah. And I think it goes even higher than that. I think the Yetziratic world, where the angelic forces literally that have everything to do with incarnating us, which I don't think anyone's ever going to figure that out. That's some of the codes and secrets in the ciphers. Like, you just take the Keys of Solomon is also synonymously known as the Goetia. It's also known as the Shem HaMephorish in the Bible. Yeah. There are 72 angels that are encrypted in the 3 verses of Exodus. There's also the wings of the wind that are referred to in the Psalms. Oh yeah, the planet Earth is a very divine place. I mean, you find me some smartass in a college who can tell you how they can splice genes all they want. Just try and create life sometime. Try and create life from scratch. Look at the agility of animals and human beings. I mean, it's magical when you just look at anything from a flower to a human being. When you just look at, from a scientific standpoint, how does it even exist and function and grow and genetically go through its evolutional cycles? It's stunning. And, human beings, that's why AI is a dangerous thing to our lower consciousness if it's allowed to manipulate us. Because when we look at, we're entering a world right now where, like young people with social media, the influences that they know they can affect on the lower conscious mind control is not dead. We're living it. It's been here for thousands of years. The spirits know this. And it's really important for us to stay spiritually centered and grounded, because none of us are going to live forever. And yet there's forces that are magically keeping this place generative. I mean, look, there's no guy in the sky holding the Earth at a 23-degree, 44-minute angle, right? As it goes around the sun. And even to the flat earthers, I say that method, that whole celestial model is so synchronized. I actually worked with Robert Hand, who was a really interesting guy. He started a company called Astrolabe in the late 70s, early 80s. And he was actually working with NASA in the timings of the celestial mechanics for computer programs, for astrology programs. In fact, I had some of the very first astrology programs like Chart Wheels, which ran on DOS and all that. And I was talking to Rob, and I said, well, how accurate are these computer programs to what's really happening in the sky? He said, NASA worked with some of his programmers, and he said what they were stunned is the synchronicity. Yes, there's wobble and all that, but the synchronicity of the sun and the moon and all the rest of the planets isn't kind of close. It's to the millisecond. He said those planets are to the millisecond. If anybody wants to go outside, just take your iPhone or your Droid and go buy a little program. It's called, what the heck is it? It's called Skyview, which is a very simple program. And if you look at the physical rise times of the Earth and then take your program, it literally uses your iPhone or your Droid, and you can just hold it up. Like right now, I'm actually doing it. I'm looking at Mars and Jupiter and Neptune and all that. And if you take an astrology program or you take your eye outside, you will find they are right on. Now, how can that be? We are living in physics. There's things called standing waves, where they're literally locked physical attributes of light and sound and vibration and energy. And it's not a theory, it's a fact. In fact, if you study acoustics or you study anything to do with wave technology, it's so accurate. It's right on. The universe, and you could say the solar system, particularly in the Earth, it is synchronized more tightly than any clock. And you got to say, what's causing this? It isn't gravity. Any scientist will tell you no one can explain why the Earth sits at the angularity it does. This is why we have eclipses. And there's ancient lore that the moon used to shine all the time. How about that?
Yeah, that is strange. That is weird to think about that, too. Carl Jung also said in his dream explorations, or I guess you could say his active imagination explorations, that he was caught in the waters of the spirit and consciousness that the moon was governing, almost like he was plankton in the ocean, and there was nothing he could do but just go back and forth. That's a pretty freaky thing to think about.
You just hit something that was right on, Joe, and that is the waters of consciousness. There's something about the Earth. They actually say that our nose and our upper lip has a mark in between it, and they say that's the mark the angel makes to knock us out. Now, a lot of people can do astral travel. A lot of people get glimpses, but we are shut off pretty much most of the time from any direct access to our past lives and who we really are. And there's something very interesting about this planet, because they actually say the only thing you really have is free will. And I disagree with a lot of astrologers. A lot of astrologers say, well, this predicts the future. I'm not so sure it predicts the future. I think it influences the future.
Yeah.
Astrology is like a road. It's like if you jump in your car right now, you are going to be at the effect of the traffic or no traffic, the stoplights, the go light. You can ignore them. You can do whatever you want. That's free will, but you might do so at your peril. But you're going to be affected. And if you're out here in the land of the fruits and nuts, let me tell you, you will be affected by traffic. You clearly will find, in large metropolitan area. Well, you live in Florida, you know what it's like.
Yeah, they drive 100 miles an hour here everywhere you go.
And the traffic's horrible on those one freeways up and down the coast. It's just jammed when it gets thick,
Yeah.
So you're at the effect. That's astrology. So when you get hard aspects, it's like traffic. Violent aspects can be like accidents. Really wonderful aspects are like blowing down the road, listen to your favorite music with no traffic. So it's very analogous to that. So the astrology is not us. Like many people run around and say, oh, you're a Pisces, you're an Aries. And I always say that's love, light, and cluelessness. We're not our astrology. We're experiencing our astrology. So we have free will. We have a consciousness. And the spirits on this planet go out of their way to keep us dumbed down and keep us focused on the material. Because I can tell you, we're not taking nothing with us when we exit this plane at all.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're totally spot on about that. And look, we'll open up the phone lines too. If you guys want to ask Jeff a question, you can. We're not going to do readings on the air or anything like that. It's 1-800-588-0335. Jeff Harman at jeffharman.com. All the services are there, the gem readings, the clearings, the astrological services. Go check out the website. We'll be right back. Leave a rating for the show and leave a shout out. The call-in number for tonight is 1-800-588-0335. If you want to ask Jeff a question, you can. We have the new phone line system up, so it's all good in the hood. Looks like we got 765 area code, and maybe Indiana, maybe. You're on the air with Jeff Harman. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Joe. This is Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
I think I've spoken with you one time before with Mary last November.
Okay. Do you have a question for Jeff?
I have a little revelation for him, actually. I'm seeing particles of turquoise that it's like they realign and they keep realigning around you. And I'm picking up the vibration of the breastplates that are spoken of in the Old Testament, the armor of God, the protection, and so forth. And this is totally wrapped around and intertwined with Jupiter energy. I don't really understand. I channel a lot of things. I don't really understand what I'm saying. I was just told to call you and tell you this, and hopefully you will comment on it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. That's very positive.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for calling, Sandra. And thanks for listening. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
You guys have a wonderful rest of your life. Thank you so much for being here.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jeff, you got the Jupiter energy wrapped around you, brother. That's a good thing.
Well, the Jupiter is good, man. Jupiter in Nadi astrology always is very benefic. It really is.
Yeah, I see. This is something I want to talk to you about too, because you know, if it's not the esoteric stuff we like talking about, it's astral travel or out of body, right? But when you look at both of these things, I guess. You know, when I read Robert Monroe's material and I look at both of these things, I see a lot of stuff that Robert Monroe encountered that the Kabbalists were talking about, but in kind of different ways. You know, do you think it's safe for people to explore these things? Because I get these questions all the time, and I'd rather just kind of pitch them off to you and say, what do you think? Do you think it's safe for people to astral travel or try to get out of body or do Kabbalistic meditation, so to speak?
Well, I'm not any authority to tell anybody to do anything.
Sure.
But I would say this, that, if you're really grounded and spiritually stable, yeah, I think it's wonderful stuff. I mean, I do it a lot when I clear. It's all intention. Everything is intention. If you're out to help people, if you're out to do good things, even when people do horrible things to you, like, I'm always amazed at different people's consciousness. When I was growing up, I experienced some really crazy stuff that was really pretty out there. I can tell you that. And what my experience is that if you're trying to do good and help people, the elementals you emit out of your third eye chakra, there's an old saying, what you are speaks so loudly, you can't hear a word that a person saying. And we see that it's known as physiognomy. You can see in a person if they're evil. You can see if their intentions are good. And it's all about that. If we're trying to really help one another and not be destructive, I think the intent's always good. It's really good to become knowledgeable. Most people who want to do astral travel or spiritual healing, there's the conscious mind needs a framework at which to operate in. Like you take practices like Qigong or, certain path working in astral travel. That stuff's important because it gives us in the lower conscious mind, it's like a road. You can't just jump in your car and cut across the neighborhoods. You have to have a path and a stable route in which to travel. And the conscious mind is like that. It needs a place at which to ground and root through. I think there's a lot of dangerous practices out there. I really don't like a lot of the magical stuff that I've studied or had people exposed to me, and some of it is exceedingly dangerous. But I also find that people who really have an intention to heal, to help, to do good, will always find that path. And there's so many teachers out there and so many different ways to do that stuff. It's like astrology. You can use it for helping people, finding someone's keys or dog, or, looking at an imbalance in potential, physical things. Or you can also use it to, like, some of those folks in the New World Order they know that these are windows in time right now where the country's vulnerable, and you can see the effects of it on the physical plane. Whether or not all the people doing it are aware of it, it's certainly happening. So astrology doesn't require belief, and it just happens. It's just the effect of energy. It's like a wave hitting the shore.
Do you think that the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, was, like you mentioned earlier, was a construct that the rabbis, so to speak, could travel through? Or they mapped this stuff out through their meditations, right? That's how this stuff. That's how they came to map these things out. I get a lot of questions about that, right? Well, but these astral travelers travel around all the time. They don't see angels or Jesus or any of this stuff. But yet, some of the things they experience, like some of the, I guess you could say purgatory things, or hellish realms, or whatever that they experience in their travels, kind of line up exactly with what these guys are talking about in the Kabbalah. So it's pretty cool to look into and study.
It's deep stuff. It really is. And I really think that some of that ancient stuff was communicated by angels. You look at the texts like the Keys of Enoch and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of text. One of my more favorite references is Rabbi Abbalafia. He was quite interesting. Now, a lot of people didn't like him. See, that he was commensurate in the same time period as Maimonides, Abbalafia, and also the Ari, which was also known as Rabbi Laria's teacher. And interesting stuff. This was a very interesting time. And it wasn't that long ago. This is all somewhere between the 12th and 14th century. A lot of interesting stuff came. The Maharil was another. And same thing in India. You find there were waves of very advanced souls. And, you were mentioning earlier about these astral influences.
Right.
There's lore that many souls will actually matriculate up into stars. That kind of stuff, gets snickered at by hard science. On the other hand, if you study the Lunar Mansions in Vedic astrology, the nakshatras, and also the fixed stars, it's pretty interesting stuff, because they certainly do seem to have their symbolism manifests in various situations. So it's really, again, a very interesting place, this little planet. And everything is consciousness. It truly is. They actually say the entire physical worlds are created by the angelic forces, not only the nature spirits, but the upper angelic forces. They claim in the upper worlds of Absolute, if the seraphims, cherubims, and the thrones stopped chanting the permutations of the divine name of God, that the entire universes would cease to exist. And that, in my opinion, I think is probably true. There's something going on here in this whole construct of reality that is far beyond any rational physicist or person of intelligence will come to the conclusion really, really fast that something very intelligent is bolting all this together. We're swimming around down here in kind of the murky waters of the sewer of consciousness. But boy, there sure seems to be a lot of places that we end up going or come from that are very divine, right, and all points in between.
Well, a lot of the mystery schools, and I know you're a fan of Dr. Stylianos at Tesla, like I am too. Mm-hmm. And I read his book, The Symbol of
Amazing
Life,
stuff.
And he has his own, I guess you could say, teachings about the tree and the symbol, and he does. He goes back all the way back to Egypt and Akhenaten, and he talks about the first appearances of Raphael and Michael, right, and this red and blue energy and stuff, but. When you look into the Bible and all these different things, they go back, most of these people like Joseph and Moses, Jesus, or even if you get into the Magdalene stuff, everybody goes back to Egypt to learn some secret or some kind of knowledge.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Or now we're in America, and you're talking about what's going on in the United States. Well, our forefathers that came over here were Masons, and if you read their books, they tried to they wanted to turn this place into kind of like a new Egypt, so to speak, but I don't know if we're going to get there.
Well, they may have in some ways. When you look at, if anyone does a little research, the architectural layout of Washington, D.C., it is literally an Egyptian temple. The French architect that laid that out, there is geometry and there is various different structural distances and dimensions that are very, very esoteric. And yeah, you're right. When you look at all the founding forefathers, most of them were Masons, and they were into very esoteric stuff. I've actually got a plate where George Washington, in fact, here, I'll put it up for anybody that goes on the YouTube. This is a mural of George Washington laying the cornerstone for the Capitol in his Masonic apron. I've actually got it on the screen right now.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't it cool? And these boys were into it. And you mentioned Manly P. Hall before. Manly P. Hall is a very interesting guy. I got to meet him. In fact, he was a character. God, big guy. I mean, tall
7
guy.
foot. Yeah.
Oh, now he was about 6'4"-ish, but huge. I mean, big guy. And I went in there. God, it's back in the 80s, and I wanted to get a copy of the esoteric teachings. And I said, but Manly, I'm not going to fire up $150, $200. And he says, you know how to fix books? I said, yeah. So he's come out in the back room. So he had a book there with the covers broken. He says, just get some book tape and tape them up. And he says, you can have it for $40. He was a cool guy. And I got to talk to him a little bit. He actually was bequeathed much of the knowledge that he got in esoteric teachings from the Rosicrucians and some of the secret societies in Southern California. I think it was about 1916. He gave a talk in a church in downtown Los Angeles. And he didn't realize it, but there were some people sitting in the audience that walked up to him later and said, "Hey, we want this knowledge not to be lost. We're going to give you the right to publish it." And they actually, if you look at the secret teachings of all ages, the artwork in that is stunning. The four color plates, just stunning. And the knowledge. And he mentions in there how at the forming of every great country, an ascended master shows up, and they usually eat fruit off the vine only. And apparently that happened with the United States. And everybody at the signing of the Declaration of Independence listened to what this man said, and they did what he said, and he mysteriously disappeared right after the signings was completed. So, and this is purported to have happened in many great societies. And what derails them is people selling out and doing evil stuff. And right now, the Pluto return on the United States and Saturn's progression shows we are at a crossroads like never before. This country is either going to be destroyed or it's going to be the phoenix rising out of the ashes. I pray it's the latter. If the Nadi astrology in my analysis is correct, it may look like it's almost destroyed. It may almost be destroyed. But in the end, it looks like, again, either the cavalry or the fire truck or whatever analogy you want to use, according to the Nadi astrology, seems to save the day right when she's about ready to go off the cliff. Somebody pulls up the plane or makes a corner, and we end up not going that direction. So let's hope that is right. I think that's going to happen again, where the war is really going on between the globalists and the nationalists. And I think it's at the top of the pyramid. I don't think it's going to be in Washington, D.C. I think the effects will be shown there. But this is all about who gets the keys to the kingdom of printing the money. Secondly, controlling the secret military that's above all the military. There's a lot more going on here than we'll ever know. And I think some of that stuff on the other side of Antarctica is absolutely true. And on and on. There's some pretty wild stuff going on this planet that I think is far beyond what any of us are ever going to fully garner. And a lot of it is exceedingly divine. And there's billions of souls here, all having experiences, and some of them are not too pleasant. Some of them are. It's really an interesting study. Again, Nadi astrology, I'm kind of stunned at how accurate it is. I just had a younger brother. He was just turning 60. He was actually my adopted brother. He was part Indian. I really liked him. Got along great with him. He joined our family at about 7 years old. And he called me up and said, "Jeff, you think I'm going to make it through this cancer?" And I looked at the chart and I said, "Ed," I said, "it ain't looking too good here, bud." And, I said, "You're going to really have to put down a cigarette and a drink and really change." Of course, he didn't do that. And just like the Nadi astrology
said, he was looking at his Saturn stuff, wasn't you? Huh?
Well, it was K2 over Saturn. See, anytime the South Node mixes up with Saturn, it's very special conditions. It's not just a transit. Usually the transits are involved, but by progression as well as doshas, you got to look at the whole picture from like 50,000 feet down. And when you do, it's usually right on. My mother died in 1988, and she knew astrology well. And I'm telling you, the symbolism in Nadi astrology was spot on. Every person I see who exits the physical plane usually has those symbolisms. And it's interesting, it's inextricably linked to the eclipse points in the chart, which most astrologers know as the north and south nodes. And it's very special conditions in Nadi astrology. And which again shows me, if we hear in the ancient scriptures, certain people used to live, 200 years, 800 years old. That, right, in my opinion, might absolutely be true. I can't prove that. But if you change the ecliptical pattern of the sun and the moon and the earth, in other words, its angularity, what astrologers have to admit, do you know it's darkening the moon 99% of the month? Us, planet Earth, we're the ones causing the phases of the moon. So even though science is going to say, well, there's all these angles and all this stuff, a lot of it is down to spiritual consciousness. And I think once a certain wave of souls passes through this place, experiencing, purifying, and rectifying, because that seems to be what this place might be. And that's when the axis might actually tip. So it might be the other way around. It's when we have enough soul roots purified. This is actually mentioned in the Shari Hagilgam. It's also mentioned in other Vedantic texts that it is the waves of souls passing through here that alter the celestial mechanics. So again, astrology is really astronomy that may be reversely controlled, or you could say not so much controlled, but influenced by the souls manifesting here, which is far beyond what any one of us are ever going to figure out. It certainly seems to be that there's some very, very powerful angelic forces that are holding this whole place in its place the way it is, and allowing for the conscious states that we all seem to buy into. Shakespeare might have been right. This is the stage, and we are all the actors. And the North Node seems to be the movie that we all get delusioned by. The dream may be dreaming us.
Oh, well, yeah, life is but a dream, right? Gently down the stream. So we only got a few minutes left here, Jeff. So I want everybody to go to the website, jeffharman.com. There's a ton of services there that you offer, and you stay pretty busy, I would think. Especially
location astrology has really been huge. I got so many people wanting location astrology, and also the cycles. People love the readings with the cycles. I love the Zoom today. I mean, it's really miraculous because people can make a movie sitting right in the comfort of their own home. Just recording it on their computer, and you can play it back, and it's amazing, to see your cycles. I love when I can tell people that they've got peaks coming, and also if they got a challenging time, they can mitigate it, or make it different than it would have been had they not known about it.
That's the key right there. So guys, go to jeffharman.com and get an edge on this stuff. That's what it's all about. Just get a little bit of an edge on this astrological weather and all this crazy spiritual stuff that's going on. Jeff, my listeners love having you here, whether they're the live audience or the podcast audience. I can't wait to talk to you again down the road. What you're doing means quite a bit to all of us. So thank you again.
Oh, and same with you, Joe. You're always bringing, good consciousness to people. And that's an important thing.
I'm trying to, man. I'm trying.
I told you got the moon in the midheaven. You people like you.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to. It's when you're up against the political shows, the scare me to death shows, and everything else. It's kind of hard. It's hard to put that light into the world, but we're trying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this is a time when we definitely want to shore up a little bit, because these people they're out to tighten up. Now's the time. Watch your money. It ain't a bad idea to have a few supplies around, because these folks are definitely shaking the tree here, and the loose ones are going to fall out. But I think if we give it time here, and I hope my analysis in the astrology is right, the crap storm will pass. This is not permanent, but the effects of what they're doing are going to be powerful on this nation over this next couple of years. Really powerful.
You guys heard it. jeffharman.com. Go to the website. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, same time, same channel right here on the Fringe FM. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams.